90s, early 2000s. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari and Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Varudikacharya Ashtotar Tata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Varudikacharya Ashtotar Tata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Hare Krishna. Now how's the volume? Is the volume good? Okay, volume is good. Okay. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamidiriate. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 13th day of May, 2020, in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in the fourth canto, the creation of the fourth order, chapter 24, chanting the song sung by Lord Shiva, text number 21. Nilarakatotpalamboja Kalarindivarakanam Hangsasarasa Chakva excuse me Hangsasarasa Chakrahva Karandavanakujitam Nilarakatotpalamboja Kalarindivarakanam 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 Hangsasarasa Chakrahva Karandavanakujitam Nila, blue. Rakta, red. Utpala, lotus. Ambaja, born from the water. Kalara, another kind of lotus. Indivara, another kind of lotus. Akaram, the mine. Hangsa, swans. Sarasa, cranes. Chakrava, the ducks named Chakrava. Karandava, birds of the name, in other words, Karandava birds. Nikujitam, vibrated by their sounds. Translation. So the Prachetas have come across, is it Bindu Sarovara? I forget, it's the lake of Shiva, and is describing a lake. In that great lake, there were different types of lotus flowers. Some of them were bluish, and some of them were red. Some of them grew at night, some in the day, and some, like the Indivara lotus flower, in the evening. Combined together, the lotus flowers filled the lake so full that the lake appeared to be a great mine of such flowers. Consequently, on the shores, there were swans and cranes, chakravakas, kandaravas, and other beautiful water birds standing about. Purport. The word akaram, mine, is significant in this verse, for the reservoir of water appeared like a mine from which different types of lotus flowers were produced. Some of the lotus flowers grew during the day, some at night, and some in the evening, and accordingly they had different names and different colors. All these flowers were present on that lake, and because the lake was so calm and quiet and filled with lotus flowers, superior birds like swans, chakravakas, and karandavas stood on the shores and vibrated their different songs, making the entire scene attractive and beautiful. As there are different types of human beings, according to the association of the three qualities of material nature, so there are similarly different types of birds, bees, trees, etc. Everything is divided according to the three qualities of material nature. Birds like swans and cranes, who enjoy clear waters and lotus flowers, are different from crows, who enjoy filthy places. Similarly, there are persons who are controlled by the modes of ignorance and passion, and those who are controlled by the mode of goodness. The creation is so varied that there are always varieties found in every society. Thus, on the bank of this lake, all the superior birds live to enjoy that atmosphere created by that great reservoir filled with lotus flowers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Shri Parampara. So this is what's so great about the Bhagavatam. You know, there's plenty of verses, and they take their time describing in great detail things like this lake. So you really get a sense of the atmosphere, very sattvic atmosphere, beautiful atmosphere that Shiva is residing in. And these Prachetas who are already in the mode of goodness, they're enlivened by this whole atmosphere. Prabhupada talks about this being like a mine. I once, in my book work, I'm always checking dictionaries and things. So I remember looking up lotus in the Sanskrit dictionary. I think there are 24 or more different words for different kinds of lotuses. It's amazing how important the lotus is in the Vedic culture, and especially in description of Krishna. We have, and some of you can help me if I forget one, there's 8 different parts of his body that are lotus. See if I can remember. The face, the eyes, the hands, the feet, the navel. Maybe the hands and the feet count as 2. I'm not sure. Lotus mouth, sometimes, huh? And the feet are 2, yeah. Yeah, it's another 2. There you go. 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2, 1, 2. So there's one verse which unfortunately I forget the Sanskrit, but it describes how the gopis, when their bee-like eyes look at any one of those 8. This is in the Nectar of Devotion. You'll find it's described like any one of those 8 parts of Krishna's lotus feet. Their eye, like bee-like eyes, become so attracted to the thick honey of the beauty that they can't escape. In other words, it's like a bee getting stuck inside of a thick lotus flower. They can't withdraw their vision from that sight. So this is how eager we should try to be to see Krishna. So one thing Prabhupada mentions here is the modes of nature. That modes of nature are influential throughout material nature. And so we find trees in the mode of goodness, trees in the mode of ignorance, a lot of thorns, and no flowers, no fruits, that's like the mode of ignorance. But in Vrindavan you find all the trees, there's always plenty of fruits and flowers. When Krishna walks into the forest, the gopis are describing, what does it say? Vanalatastada atmani vishnam vyanjayandihiva pushpa paladya tanadabhada patapamamadhara prema rishtatanabo vishusma. That as Krishna and Balaram and all the other cowboys, they walk in, the trees and the creepers, they become enlivened because Krishna has come to their home now. And suddenly you've all seen these, what do they call that when you can see the blossoming flowers in a short time? Time-lapse photography. So suddenly they all blossom with fruits and flowers, and the new weight causes them to bow down to Krishna like that. So this is the epitome of nature that's being influenced. In the case of Krishna, of course, it's all transcendental, and their transcendental personalities. But even in this world, when you find a strong influence such as Lord Shiva, then the whole environment becomes very idyllic, and he's meditating there, and it's an idyllic environment, and the Prachetas come across this, and it's like a mine of lotus flowers. I remember going to India, and I saw 1 or 2 lotus flowers growing. I think it was in one of those fountain pools in the what is it? The MVT area where people they had put some lotus flowers. It's very attractive, but you can imagine like a whole lake
filled with varieties of lotus flowers, the fragrance, the bees coming, the pollen. It's going to be described here. So it's like a whole natural festival going on. And how enlivening that is for the consciousness. Prabhupada talks about how there's this phenomenon of bhoga tyaga, where people work very hard all week, but in the weekend, the last thing they want to do is to go to the office. You want to try to get away to a natural place or some place where you can enjoy. The very wealthy, corporate movers, the heads of corporations, they'll take vacations or so, and they'll try to get away and get to a natural place where it's enlivening and peaceful like that. So this is the way human beings are supposed to live, not in these big hellish cities with factories and the noise pollution is a big thing, or to speak of the air pollution, water pollution, and ground pollution that gets into the food. So it all creates a society where the mind is very much disturbed. The whole idea is that this is very peaceful. It's good for meditation. It's mode of goodness, mode of pure goodness. And it's very conducive to what's going to happen now, which is that Shiva is going to instruct them in this wonderful song of his. And it's, remember, I told you, memorize that song. And whenever the Shiva Ratri comes, I like to remember one of the verses where Shiva is praying to have the Lord revealed to him. Padashadat padma palasha rochisha nakaddubiya known to magang badundada pradashi and swi mapasasadasat padam gudo marga gudustamodusha. Padashadat padma palasha rochisha means your feet defeat the lotuses that grow during the Sharat season, during the autumn season. Padma palasha rochisha, and from the toenails are emanating this effulgence. Please let manifest those feet in my heart, and so I can see you and serve you. It's Lord Shiva as the devotee, as the best devotee. Vaishnavanam Jada Shambhu. So it's very important to see what his position really is, because people tend to, in India especially, they tend to worship Shiva for material purposes, and often he's mistaken for someone who's in the mode of ignorance. Actually, he presides over the mode of ignorance, and he serves as a shelter for those who are in the mode of ignorance to somehow become elevated. But generally, they just pray to him for material benefits. But he much prefers to be able to. Do you know how to fix this? It's more stable. So that's what we're seeing here. Now this, everything, persons who are controlled by the modes of ignorance and passion, those who are controlled by the mode of goodness. So this is something that we sometimes forget. We forget many other things. How Krishna consciousness is meant to bring us up, to purify us from from being influenced by the lower modes. Because in this age, it's very, very common and easy and universal to be controlled or heavily influenced by the lower modes of nature. And in that mentality, it's impossible to be Krishna conscious. And the whole idea of an ashram and a temple is to give you a place where you can elevate and come to the mode of goodness or even pure goodness, in which case everything spiritual becomes more attractive. Your mind is more peaceful and open to spiritual pursuits. Whereas, what are the qualities of this age? One of the qualities is always disturbed, right? Now, it's interesting that this verse begins with the word prayena, because which unfortunately was edited out of the original translation. Because Prabhupada said, for the most part, people are short-lived, period, in this age. They're lazy in the matter of spiritual endeavor, misguided, unlucky, and always disturbed. But that prayena is important, and it applies to all of them. For the most part, in this age, people are short-lived, they're always disturbed, they're misguided. But it's possible, even in this age, to find people who are not, the longevity is pretty much set, But the other elements, you don't have to, these are the acharyas, these are the saints who you can take shelter of. So, being part of this age, in the middle of the Kali Yuga, certainly, everybody's prone to be affected by these. and more. Just like now, there's a pall of fear overlaying like practically the entire world because of this coronavirus thing. People are terrified. You read about, I mean, the number of deaths just in America has gone up to over 2,000 to 3,000 a day from this thing. By far the most in the world. America is doing this thing. So what does that mean? People are at home. They open the economy, but people are not going to go to work if they feel they're going to die. It risks your life. So it's and it's invisible. Anyone can be a carrier. So that fearfulness is a result of the mode of passion and ignorance. It's a highly bodily concept of life, and it's just one of the aspects of living in this material world saturated by the modes of nature. So the process of devotional service, the regulations, help us to come to the mode of goodness and beyond. But so that's a very important aspect. And as we associate, this is a very important verse in the 13th chapter, as we choose to associate with those modes of nature, that will determine our destiny. Purushak pakatisto hi bhungte pakati jangunan karananguna sangosya sadasatyoni janmasu. That the living entity, the living entity who is by nature prakriti, maybe para prakriti, but still tatastha shakti. But we're trying to act as the purusha, as the enjoyer, so we're called purusha. Prakritisto hi, within material energy. Bhunkte prakriti jangunan, experiences the results of the association of modes of nature. Prakriti jangunan, which are generated from prakriti. Karananguna sangosya, the cause of good and bad births is how we associate with those modes. Now, without any superior knowledge, people are helpless. They're just influenced by whatever modes come at them, whatever is most influential. The sound, the taste, the form, the people, everything. And in this age, passion and ignorance are extremely prominent. And so people are helpless, And so this is the great value of what Srila Prabhupada came to give. He came to give knowledge of what's really going on, who we are, and how we exist in this world, where it comes from, everything, all of this sambandha gyan. And he gave the means, the bhakti yoga centered on the chanting of the holy name, by which we can change those modes of nature that are influencing us. We can transform our whole life through choosing to associate with Krishna, specifically through the sound vibration, especially through the holy name. So that's so much of it is of bhakti yoga is overcoming conditionings. Some of them are very strong and long-lived. Even just like some of them are not going to be able to change. The body you have is the body you have. It may have so many defects, it may have so many tendencies. So you have to deal with that. But the basic thing is to change our consciousness, change our mind through the process of bhakti, which incorporates everything, the senses, the mind, the intelligence, who can all be dovetailed with Krishna. So part of that is hearing Bhagavatam every day. And just getting this whole experience now, because you really have to feel like you're there. That's the whole idea, is that they're being described. You should visualize them, try to get into the whole description of this Bindu Sarovara. And then the interaction between Lord Shiva and these Prachetas is so auspicious. And then you hear that song, one after another. Prabhupada explains it so nicely. I remember he going through the different members of the Chatuvyuha, and how each one influenced a different part. The Aniruddha is in charge of the mind, and all these different things. I've learned so much just from proofreading his book 45 years ago. So, and the Prabhupada makes the point. There are always varieties found in every society, and an important element of Krishna consciousness is seeing that the varieties here are a reflection of the varieties in the spiritual world. It's not that the goal is to get rid of all the variety, The mistake is that, all this variety is causing me so much confusion, I'm getting affected by the modes, therefore let's get rid of the variety. That's Mayavad. That's or even Brahmananda. Mistaking personality for what we experience personality through these physical bodies. You know, if personality means having a physical body, then I don't want to have a body. I don't want to have a mind. You see, that's the big mistake of the Mayavadis. There is transcendental personality, spiritual personality, beginning with Krishna's, pure, absolutely pure personality, and that's what we're striving for. Even in these bodies, even in these material bodies, we can awaken that consciousness, because it all depends on the mind and consciousness. So I always remember reading that verse, Purusha Prakti Stohi. Prabhupada says, I think how important that verse is. This verse is, he called attention to it as a very important verse to understand, because it's where we live. In other words, at any given moment in our wakeful day, we can choose to act according to the mode of passion, goodness, or ignorance, or to act according to transcendental mode, beyond pure goodness, according to Krishna consciousness. That's within our ability to do. And having the knowledge of how to act, for our elevation, and then actually doing it, that's the serious devotees do that. So that you can come out of this influence, even though you're surrounded. Trying to remind me to pick up that magazine before I leave. Put it up there, I forgot it. Because just because you're walking down the street and the buses are going by, well, in New York, I remember the buses, they would always put out so many fumes and the noise is there. If you're strong enough, you don't have to be influenced by it. Like Prabhupada, he also walked down Broadway, with a bag full of his books, looking for bookstores to sell them. I always remember that year when he was more or less alone, 6-7 months, and he wasn't affected because of the strength of his consciousness. He was floating on top of it, like one of these lotuses on the water. But it takes practice, just like you have to build up a muscle. So you have to build up your spiritual muscles, so in any environment you can maintain that equilibrium, right? It's right in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita in the second chapter. To have that steady intelligence, Vivasayatmaka buddhi, that firm intelligence that can't be swayed because you're fixed on the orders of your spiritual master. Prabhupada gives that insight in the purport. And then Arjuna wants to know, well, what's the qualities of one whose intelligence is fixed in Krishna consciousness? And is dukeshvana vignamana. I mean, how could that be more pertinent than to this environment here? Dukeshvana vignamana means that even when there's dukkha all over, your mind is not disturbed. This word udvigna comes up again and again. What is Prahlad? What's the first verse? He answers his father. His father wants to know, what's the best thing you learned today? Now, tatsara. Keep going. No, second line. That's where the udvigna is. Some udvigna. Yeah, listen. Thank you. So, Tatsauramanya, he says, the best thing I learned, best of the demons. Sort of best for whom, Prabhupada says? For the conditioned soul, for us, for every living being. Dehina. Who is sadasamudvigna dhyama sadgrahat, always disturbed in mind. Not just udvigna, but samudvigna. Not just sankirtan, but not just kirtan, but sankirtan. It's an intensifier, completely disturbed because I'm identifying with what I'm not, and grahat. I'm holding on for dear life to something that's dying, namely this material body. This is me, I mean, we sometimes forget what a relief it is to realize you're not the body. I mean, I'm telling you, when you get older, it's really a comfort to know I'm not this body. It's falling apart. It doesn't work very well anymore. But that's me. That's not me. So it's a whole different experience. Can you imagine? Just imagine, because you're all devotees. If you spent your whole life enjoying various gross and subtle pleasures, you've been an enjoyer. Maybe you had a fair amount of wealth you could enjoy. And then as time goes on, it becomes more and more difficult to enjoy. All the different senses, they get weaker and this and that. And then how depressing that is. I can't enjoy anymore. And there's no life after death. That's not even part of the equation. This is it, This now wrinkly body, weakening and so on. That's all there is. What a depression that is. But you see Prabhupada and, you know, some of the older Vaishnavas, God brothers and others, they're still laughing, you know. Once someone sent me a book. It was written by, remember Babru? Were you here when Babru was here? He took, it's funny, he took sannyas, you know, from Triparaya Maharaj. His name is Ashram Swami or something. No, old Babru, the original Babru. The young Babru wrote the book. And the old Babru, now called Ashram Swami, he wrote the foreword. So it says foreword by Ashram. I said, that he wrote the book too. What is he writing the foreword in a different name? I said, no, it's a different. But it was all about Prabhupada's god brother, Kinshana Krishnadas Babaji, who I had the great fortune to meet one time. Among the devotees who lived in India, you know, in Vrindavan, they had some really nice. Bibi Govinda Swami loves to tell these stories. He spent a Kadashi with him one time. You know, he didn't know what to do on a Kadashi, so he spent. He said, "Oh well, we'll do a chant Hare Krishna." You know, he was thinking we'd do some bhajans because he's famous for that. You know, no, we'll just chant Hare Krishna. So okay, he started chanting, and he says that his chanting, you know, of his japa was just like the most beautiful bhajan. He wasn't missing anything. Anyway, he was a very dear friend of Prabhupada's, and there was, I think I began reading the book and how when they met after a long separation, Prabhupada had been in India and then he came back, and I think he was in Vrindavan. Maybe it was when he came back to recuperate, and he was in Vrindavan at that time. This, Krishna Krishnadas. He kind of migrated between Mayapur and Vrindavan. And when he came into Prabhupada's room, Prabhupada just stood up and gave him a big hug. There was no obeisances or anything, like no formality. And it was laughter and all kinds of jokes in Bengali someone couldn't understand. You know, it was a tremendous, wonderful feeling there. So here he was, you know, and he was Prabhupada's age. And I met him in 77, right after Prabhupada disappeared. I went to Mayapur. I was part of the group that went down there and placed the pushpa, the garlands of flowers he was wearing when they took him around after he had passed. Those the very spiritual flowers, those that became the source or the foundation of the Pushpa Samadhi, which anyone who's been to Vrindavan, you know, that was a very amazing structure there. So, but I also had an assignment as a BTG editor, cub reporter, and that was we had heard that Prabhupada's godbrother, Sridhar Swami, Sridhar Maharaj, had proof that Prabhupada was the Shakti-based avatar. That's newsworthy. So I was the first one to go see Sridhar Maharaj after Prabhupada's demise, for sure. First devotee. And so I went across the river, and I walked into his, I knew where his ashram was. And there, who greeted me was a Krishna Das Babaji. And in my immaturity and foolishness, I said, "Oh, would you like to hear a nice shloka?" And so, and he laughed, and he said, "Yeah." And so, I forget. I had seen him from a distance before in Vrindavan. I knew who he was. Maybe he introduced himself. I don't know. It's been so long. It's been over 40 years. But so I forget which verse I said. It was It was from the Krishna Karnamrita. And he laughed. You know, he was famous for laughing a lot. He said, "Oh, just see what Swami Maharaj." He called Prabhupada Swami Maharaj. "Just see what Swami Maharaj has done. He made them lechas and yavanas recite the." So then he encouraged me. You should learn all the verses by heart. And I may have done a couple of them for him. I haven't done that yet. I should try to do that. So anyway, the point I'm making is that just like Srila Prabhupada, you know, he was on fire with Krishna consciousness. You know, he was an elderly man, you know, elderly gentleman. You know, his health wasn't that great, but he was, you know, enjoying like anything. Especially when he got to preach, you can hear it in his voice. You know, when 26th Avenue finally happened after all that struggle, he has an audience ready to hear. You know, and so many times Prabhupada showed his ecstatic mood. So that's such a valuable thing as you realize that you can tap into a source of pleasure that has nothing to do with this body. I mean, the body is just a way that you see the evidence of that pleasure, but it's your soul who's always with Krishna and your consciousness, and you completely blow away the whole usual, you know, general depression and everything that comes with old age. So that's what, we're seeing evidence of that here. This is manifested outside. Shiva's influence is outside in the idyllic scene that's there. And it's just conducive to calm mind, especially the water, the pure water, the lake, the whole thing. And in that calm mind, they're going to hear this incredible song, 30 or more verses, which focuses, of course, on Krishna Bhakti. So this is really meant to be an ideal place. Prabhupada wanted us to establish these farms where we'd have the cows and it'd be peaceful and devotees could practice Krishna consciousness nicely. It's difficult to do when the whole, environment around is exactly the opposite. But this is what life is meant to be like. In the Satya Yuga, this is what it was. You find everywhere. And in Krishna Lila, this whole idea of the different living entities all cooperating and exulting in Krishna consciousness. I'll share with you a similar description of Vrindavan that's given at the beginning of the Venugita chapter. So it's after the rainy season. Remember the rainy season in autumn? There's that chapter, and there's all these wonderful analogies in chapter 20 of the Krishna book. So the rainy season, everyone has to kind of hunker down because the rain is falling and everything. But then when the rains stop and it's autumn, everything is completely refreshed. There's the flowers are blooming, the fruits are blooming, and people are coming out, and animals are coming out, and the whole thing is there. So that's what's describing here. So the verse begins, the chapter begins, Ittam sharat swachadalam padmakara sugandhana nivasad vayunavatam sogogo palakrochitaha. That thus the clear lakes, the lakes and the rivers became very clear and pristine because of all the water that had fallen. And now the clouds have dissipated, so the sun is shining, everything's very wonderful. Sharat Swachadam Padmakara Sugandhina, filled with lotus flowers, growing all the lakes and the rivers, just like here. Padmakara Sugandhina, all the fragrances, all the senses are being enlivened. And so Krishna, with the Balaram and the other cowherd boys and the cows, thus enters into the forest. Now this next verse increases the description. Kusumatabhanada Dashashmibringa Vidikullagushtasaraksar Mahidram Madhupadadapagas Charihanga Sahapashapala Balashtakujavenam. You ever know that verse? Chakujavenam. Didn't we have something like that? Yeah. It says here, Nakujitam, vibrated by the sound. So Nakujavenam, Krishna's playing that flute, and it's vibrating very beautifully. So I put this and the next verse into a poem, the next famous verse describing Krishna's walking into the forest with his friends. Very famous verse, Barhapidam, Nadavadavapu. Good one to memorize. It's a beautiful description of Krishna and his friends and Balaram entering. The gopis is uttering this verse. So you add them both together and here's what you get. Vrindavans, rivers, lakes and hills resound with charming hums and trills as flocks of birds and maddened bees rejoice among the flowering trees. To those idyllic woods and glens repairs Govinda with his friends, Sri Rama and the cowherd boys, to taste the most exquisite joys. And as they walk along the way, absorbed in herding and in play, Sri Krishna, beauty absolute, begins to blow his mystic flute. With peacock plume upon his head and fragrant flower on each ear, he enters budges with tread sublime, a dancer without peer. His golden yellow raiment glows, his garland reaches to his knees, and from his lips the nectar flows and fills his flute with melodies. As Krishna thus begins his day with friends who sing his glory sweet, he beautifies the forest way with fine impressions of his feet. Samadhi culminates in this, to always see the scene of bliss within oneself and outside too. May Krishna give this boon to you. So that last part about Samadhi, that's from the Krishna book. Prabhupada said this is real transcendental meditation, to visualize this scene, the Venugita coming up, and then the gopis will describe one after another how the different living and non-living beings. He starts with the cows, and then the goddesses of heaven, and then he moves on, and rivers are also reacting, and the cloud is reacting to the flute. Everything. So that's Vrindavan, and this is just a very peaceful, wonderful environment that's conducive to hearing and chanting that we're reading about now. Okay, I'm going to read this wonderful little translation again, and any comments or questions. In that great lake, there were different types of lotus flowers. Some of them were bluish, some of them were red, some of them grew at night, some in the day, and some, like the Indivara lotus, in the evening. Combined together, the lotus flowers filled the lake so full that the lake appeared to be a great mine of such flowers. Consequently, on the shores, there were swans and cranes, chakravakas, karandavas, and other beautiful water birds standing about. Any comments there from our audience?
The only comment was someone says, "Thank you, good morning."
Thank
No
you.
question, though. From Luz Maria Rala, something like that.
What's the name?
Luz Maria Rala.
Maybe out of town. Miami.